good. Turkish book industry is booming. No one, you would not be intimidated by free speech problems if you write a novel. Don't forget that Dostoevsky or Tolstoy wrote their novels when Tsar was reading and censoring. Most of the time, you won't get in trouble for writing a novel. But political commentary, journalistic writing, outspoken Kurds, radicals, they are always in trouble. But what free speech is, novels will not put you in trouble of free speech, but yes, political commentary, criticizing radically army, criticizing religion, so many things will still put you in trouble in Turkey. Sometimes legal problem, sometimes media campaigns, death threats kind of problem.
But it's not really trouble.
No, it's not censorship. No, that's not a big deal.
Is he being tongue in cheek or
not at all? He's
Oh my God.
100%. That was Orhan Pamuk, the famous Turkish writer, talking in a Big Think interview from about 12 years ago. And I remembered that when this thing came up with Otessa Mushfi, I remembered that interview because I laughed out loud when I first saw the interview when he said that.
Yeah.
Very strange ideas about what censorship is and isn't across the world these days.
Right. It's not censorship, but if you have some political commentary that goes against the grain, then you might get sued or you might get thrown in jail, but that's all. Yeah, it's no
People
trouble.
may yell at you, they may threaten your children, put you in jail, but it's not really censorship. No, it's you write a novel, it's fine. Just make sure the novel is nice, that's all. You just love the president, the government, Erdogan, it's fine. 1, 2, 3. This is the insufferable. Welcome to the Insufferable Bastards.
Welcome to the Insufferable Bastards podcast.
We're the Insufferable Bastards.
Yeah, just like
wow.
We have like argued ourselves into a corner where some censorship, I guess, is acceptable, even in far off places like Turkey.
Yeah, apparently.
But maybe that speaks to the complexity of what censorship actually is.
Yes.
Because
yes,
the right has always said if the government is doing it, it's censorship. If corporations do it, it's not. And then the left says if it's the rabble, if it's the rabblement online, it's not censorship.
Right. Right.
I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I think I think there's many forms and like many degrees of censorship, right? I think there's the obvious examples of governmental bans on certain kinds of materials. I mean, what Pamuk is talking about seems pretty blatant censorship to me, as much as he downplays it, right? So that's kind of easy to point to and call censorship, but I think it comes in different forms, and it can certainly come from outside of the government as well, right? And perhaps the outcome is not a writer getting thrown in jail, but being having their work like stifled or silenced in some way or another. How do you
completely
define
agree.
it? Yeah.
I mean, that's, for a long time it was like corporate censorship was not considered really anything. There's a bunch of writers who way back in the 70s, 80s, 90s just had their books pulped at the last second because somebody complained. There's always these forms of censorship going on. There were the crazies in some county in the Midwest or something who were banning some kid's book because it had magic in it, in the Bible Belt.
Right.
But then there were just like, the imposition of corporate forces trying to silence people all the time. And all of it is censorship. It's just different forms of censorship.
Right.
But, I was very upset about the Otessa Mushfi thing. I just think that is such a clarifying moment for people who feel the right wing is in favor of free speech.
Right. So let's just talk about this story briefly, because this is what prompted us to devote an episode to censorship. So this came out, I guess late July. And at a Florida college, this South Florida State College, there's a professor who was teaching a class. I don't think the entire class was on this. I think she was teaching a unit on fiction with unlikable narrators. And her name is Vanita Prabhakar is the professor's name at South Florida State College. And so she taught this Ottessa Moshfegh story called Bettering Myself as one of the examples with an unlikable narrator. The point
I loved her, by the way.
Yeah. It was who, the narrator?
Unlikable, whatever.
She's just fine. She doesn't need to better herself at all. She's doing great.
Yes.
But so the professor's goal was to challenge students in her introductory and reading and writing course. I'm getting this from the New York Times article on it. She also apparently taught Cathedral by Raymond Carver. I don't find that narrator unlikable either. So interesting. I wonder how she's defining it. But there was a student in the class who emailed. Who did they email? It's unclear, but maybe the president of the university, maybe just the professor,
the
whatever.
Dean or whatever.
Maybe the dean. All they said was the story made me a bit uncomfortable, but the student ultimately completed the assignment and participated in class discussions without any incident. Okay, so it's not really the student causing the hubbub. The president of the university, Fred Hawkins, told, I guess after the student expressed the discomfort, the president told Miss Prabhakar that he would not want his college-age daughter to read the story. Okay. In a move that is highly unusual for a college president, Mr. Hawkins immediately ordered that Ms. Prabhakar be suspended and her contract not renewed.
Wasn't this guy Hawkins just like pulled from a dump somewhere? Like he's not even experienced in education or anything?
I don't know. No, he sounds like someone from like the movie Footloose or something. Like he doesn't sound like a real person. Like we can't have dancing in this town. Like he sounds like that sort of person. So it's very bizarre. So anyway, the professor,
we've reached the stage of 21st century where the Footloose becomes perfectly relevant to
it's relevant. It comes
daily
back
reality.
Again. I mean, context, obviously they've been passing fucking crazy laws in Florida around free speech in schools, right? There's a lovely Ron DeSantis has championed efforts to quash what he has deemed liberal indoctrination in education. There's a parental freedom law that limited instruction on gender and sexuality, but this is in elementary and middle schools. So this mostly is, I think, or entirely applies to K through 12 public schools in Florida, these like kind of restrictions. So I don't know what a state college president is doing, like trying to enforce these really like 1950s, like footloose law, right?
Oh, he's a bungling idiot.
I mean, I just wonder if there's something else. There must be something else going on. He must have wanted to fire her over, I'm sure there's some pre-existing friction, and maybe this just gave him what he thought would be an excuse. It doesn't seem like the teaching of this story alone it doesn't really make sense to me. But anyway, so the professor is suing. She has a lawsuit. She'll probably win, I would think. And hopefully be reinstated.
So.
Hopefully be reinstated. It's a very bizarre story. But we both read the Ottessa Moshfegh story after this news came out.
They very nicely and appropriately put it up for free. Paris Review.
Yes,
you should go read it. It's called Bettering Myself, and it's just a classic Moshfegh gambit where you have this complete like low life, falling deeper into a lower level of hell, and there's no I mean, I guess she was not someone I'd want to spend a lot of time with, I don't know, at this stage in my life, but like I certainly knew people like her,
right?
And she's troubled You know, she's not a great teacher. She's not a great person, maybe.
You're putting it very mildly. Like she's so she's a teacher at a Catholic school, which is worth noting, a Catholic school. And she comes to school in the morning. She's like still drunk from the night before. She's like throwing up in the bathroom with the nuns.
As you do.
She's talking to her students about how she like does anal. Like she's out of control. She's completely out of control. And it's very funny. It's very funny. I enjoyed it. I was laughing. I was definitely laughing out loud at this story. I felt like it gave me a little bit of that feeling of like, do you remember that old Onion headline that was like, Marilyn Manson now going door to door trying to shock people? It was like, It gave me a little bit of that feeling. Like, I think it's clearly a story that's meant to be provocative and confrontational and like, so to me,
but how provocative is it really? It's like, it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. I've read much worse things. Jesus.
For sure. It's just, but you can imagine
more intense, explicit things.
You can imagine the sort of person that like clutches their pearls at this story, but to me, it's like kind of a dimwit who reacts that way because that's so clearly just like taking the bait, right? Like, So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she throws out the red meat. Talks about being drunk and sluts and anal and sex and drinking and drugs. She goes partying with her Jewish friend. She's very casual about her stupidities and her indulgences, and doesn't get any better or anywhere by the end of the story.
There's a lot.
Which is one of my.
What surprised me was this originally published in the Paris Review?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so I guess so. on the topic of like perhaps milder forms of censorship, right? What surprised me was like the way this narrator talks about people's ethnicities. You know, I had this one other girlfriend, Jessica Hornstein, which is a fucking hilarious name for a Jewish character. Jessica Hornstein, a homely Jewish girl I'd met in college, right? And then, later...
The Filipina math teacher.
Yeah, my old Polish lady bartender, the Filipina math teacher, she talks about going home with, like, Indian guys from the club in this way that's, like, you're just... Yeah, I'm a little surprised because, you submit to so many literary journals these days and they're like in their submissions guidelines, they're like, no disparaging language about people from these,
When was the story originally published? I wonder. When do you have it there?
Let me see. 2013. There you go.
Wow, the year before everything really took off, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think it's really been the past like 10 years or so that this stuff took off. But in terms of like very, very soft forms of censorship, I do think this might have been a bit of a harder sell if it were published in the past like 5 years. I mean, and it's clearly like, the narrator is a disaster. Like she's like a vortex of like mess.
She's cool. She's cool. I like her.
In other words, she's cool. Yeah. In other words, she's really cool. But yeah, I was a little. I noted that. I was like, interesting. Can
I give you a quote from Mushfi about literature, because I like her a lot. I have to be honest. I've never finished one of her novels.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to read Eileen. Something about it, just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I mean, people should go and read these books. I think she's a great writer.
Mm-hmm.
But I just enjoy her stories much more. That another story of mine of hers that came to mind when I read this one was a similar in tone. It was like this complete disaster of a guy who like fell in love with this girl who was selling something at an antique shop.
Mm-hmm.
And just like completely made a fool of himself and fucked everything up. And by the end of the story, he's like deeper in the shit.
Yeah.
And that's just her sort of forte.
Yeah.
But what she says, I like the way she talks about literature, and I would like to see more of this kind of attitude. Here's what she says. She says, "I wish that future novelists would reject the pressure to write for the betterment of society.
Mm-hmm.
Art is not media. A novel is not an afternoon special or fodder for the Twitter sphere or material for
Mm.
journalists to make neat generalizations about culture. A novel is not BuzzFeed or NPR or Instagram or even Hollywood. Let's get clear about that. A novel is a literary work of art meant to expand consciousness. We need novels that live in an amoral universe, past the political agenda described on social media. We have imaginations for a reason. Novels like American Psycho and Lolita did not poison culture. Murderous corporations and exploitative industries did. We need characters in novels to be free to range into the dark and wrong. How else will we understand ourselves?
That's great.
Good point.
I love
Good
it.
points.
Yeah.
Lovely thing to hear, especially these days. I don't
Do
know
you
when
know
she
what-
said that, but
You know what it brings to mind? And I just had to look this up because I remember when I read it at the time and I thought it was so funny. The filmmaker Claire Denis, she's a female French filmmaker. So this was after a screening of her movie High Life, which came out a few years ago. And I guess they were doing a Q&A with the audience, and an audience member asked her about like why her films lack strong female characters. And Denis' response was, "What the fuck? I'm not a social worker."
There you go.
That's so good.
There you go.
That's so good, right? And so I feel like that's like, in a nutshell, what Mashvi's saying too, right? We're not social workers. We're not trying to better people or society or like advance, this kind of morality. That's not, but of course a work of art can do many different things, right? That's not its purpose. I guess it can be, but it's not hers, and it shouldn't, and no one should feel pressured to do that with their work.
Yeah, we've touched on this a bit before, like this idea that people feel that art or fiction especially is like an invasion of their inner space or something, and that they can't be tainted by it. Yeah. And it's just something I guess it's just because I read a lot when I was a kid, and maybe I was like scandalized by Crime and Punishment when I read it when I was like 15, and I was like, oh my God, and you're more and more, exposed to these things. Then you get to be an adult, and you're just not. You have an adult's understanding of what literature is and does. Yeah. But a lot of people just, I suppose, don't have that understanding of it or didn't reach it, and they just feel like it's moral instruction, like it's just pure moral instruction to them, and it's led both sides of the spectrum. Because I mean, let's be honest, the whole kind of woke era was very hard for a lot of people who really didn't deserve it. I mean, I'm the first to say some of the people deserved some, what they call a clapback, another word I hate, as we collect our words that we hate.
A very obnoxious phrase, yeah.
Yeah, but like some of them, I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but like I could understand the criticism of some of these people who got into trouble.
There were some people who got some comeuppance, and you're like, well, okay,
Yes. You're like, I understand the reaction to this person's. Yes. Whatever this person said. Right. But in most cases, I just was so baffled by it. Yeah. Especially when it came to books and movies and things like that. Yeah. Because I guess you and I had just grown up in an era where we saw Tarantino. Yeah. And people were totally scandalized by like Tarantino movies, but he kept making them because they were popular, and we all kind of got past it and over it.
And it felt like it was people on the left who were sort of standing up for that stuff and like trying to protect it against these more censorious forces, right? Like there was this sort of what were they called? The moral majority, right? That first emerged in late 80s, early 90s, I guess. Like Jerry
That's the thing I've always
group.
I've always tried to say to people is like the first wokes were the right wing in the 80s and 90s. They were always censoring rap lyrics. They were always censoring. They were really mad about video games. They were mad about movies. Yeah. They were the worst. And it was the people on the left, and not just the left, like the whatever socialist left, but
no. Just like left leaning people, like young people.
Anybody left of the center was like, screw these people. We're not going to ban books. We're not going to ban rap lyrics. Like, go to hell.
Right.
And then all that changed all of a sudden in the 2010s, and we all felt kind of abandoned.
Yes,
because it was so what if somebody says something offensive? What? It just was so confounding.
Right. Right. And now there's this I feel like there's a lot of revisiting of stuff that went on in the 90s, and people are sort of, people who are now on what today I guess I would call the left or liberals are sort of aghast at things that
yeah. And even just to teach a course, I just want to say, to teach a course on unlikable narrators.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Are you kidding?
I know.
Are you kidding?
I know.
Unlikable? This has to be taught?
Right.
I just find that astonishing. That's the low water line we've reached with this.
I suppose, you know what? I could see it if you're teaching college freshmen, I think it is a very introductory level literature course. So I could sort of see if you're teaching college freshmen who are probably not super well read to begin with, and and you hear people who aren't very deep readers sort of say, well, I just I what draws you to literature, a character I can really connect to and relate to, and someone I really like and whatever. And
Yawn.
And I'm always like, who gives a shit if you like, right? You know how on reality shows, the reality show contestant, there's always someone who goes, I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to make friends. That's how I feel about books. I'm not here to make friends, right? And there are, of course, there's characters I like, there's characters I love, right? And that I feel like I treasure and whatever. But there's also characters who just feel really vivid and alive to me, and I don't want to hang out with them, but I would love to spend a whole book with them because they're fascinating. And they just feel like a real person. So
do you know why I love Hamlet? Because I really identify with Hamlet. He's such a cool guy.
He's so cool.
And then Nabokov, I'm reading, I'm Humbert Hamlet is such he's so me.
He's mean. Yeah.
He's really so me, man. He's I really identify with his it's just that we have such an immensely, all the way back really to the founding of Western literatures, 18th century literature. It's they focused on reprobates, on orphans, which there was a huge bias against orphans for a long time.
Why isn't there still fucking orphans, right? Am I right?
Fuck orphans. If you're an orphan listening to this, just unsubscribe, get lost.
Stop listening right now.
All kinds of underclass, unlikable characters. Was Moll Flanders. That was it's just a very thick, rich vein thread that goes through literature.
Right.
The idea that you would want to find somebody to identify with is so childish.
Right. Well, in this country, we have the whole the outlaw, right? The outlaw. Well, the outlaw is sort of romanticized, I guess, by Americans in particular. But the outsider,
the anti-hero.
Yeah.
The anti-hero, Tony's.
Yeah,
Tony Soprano. My wife and I talk about, or used to talk about, The Sopranos in terms of when the economy gets tough, you start to see these anti-hero mobsters in movies, and it happened in the 30s. There were a ton of movies that just had these mobster characters who were the anti-hero, and it kind of represented people's, I don't know, frustrations and their sort of squelched goals and ambitions, and kind of saying fuck you to society. And that was kind of Soprano, the whole Soprano idea.
Oh yeah.
And
the grievances,
that's what made the show,
right?
That's what made the show interesting. It threw everything into a really interesting relief, because these guys were obviously bad guys. You don't want to, and to meet these real mobsters, it's these are not people that are cool that you want to hang around with.
No.
These are when you see them in a court case or something, you're oh, this guy is is pretty much a low life.
Right.
But it helps you to think, the anti-hero sort of genre kind of helps you to think through things in an interesting, sort of ironic way.
I always really loved the episodes of The Sopranos where Tony would be thrown into conflict with a person who got their who came by their wealth in supposedly quote unquote more legitimate ways, right? Like he was living in this very like upper class affluent community, and of course he came by it through organized crime, and then he would encounter these people who were like, you know, doctors or lawyers or whatever, who knew who what he was, and they would act superior, right, and sort of look down their nose at him, but they were always revealed to be, you know, just as corrupt, if not more so than him. And those were the times where you actually did kind of root for Tony. I didn't generally,
exactly.
you know, like I always felt that he was pretty much a monster, but in those episodes I kind of found myself rooting for Tony more. Yeah.
That's why the show was fun, because, and those kinds of movies are fun because there was these like business owners who were like family men or whatever, and then they were just complete gambling degenerates. They were at the strip clubs. They were getting loans, and that's still true, you know.
Of course,
these like the merchant class in America, they like pack $100, you know, suitcases of $100 bills in their basement that they're not, you know, they're not paying taxes on. They're totally stealing from the public coffers. That when COVID came through and there were those PPP loans, those all went to mid-sized businesses where people just took that money and then fired people anyway.
And you know what they would tell you? You're a schmuck not to. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're a sucker if you don't. I mean, like I'm from, you know, like famously I'm from Long Island, and this is very much like the ethos of Long Island, right? Of like it's a place where there are a lot of, you know, small business owners, like upper middle class people who have come by it, their wealth like fairly recently, and like have that sort of, you know, what Barbara Ehrenreich talked about in Fear of Falling back in the 80s, of just like the terror that it's all going to be taken away at some point. And they just very much have that attitude of like, you're a sucker if you don't do it. Right. Like,
and Trump represents that. Didn't he say?
Yes. He is the ultimate like embodiment of that. Yeah.
There was some quote from him where they were like, didn't you declare bankruptcy and like still, you know, get in trouble with not paying your taxes? And he's like, yeah, because I'm smart. I know how to work the system. And he's basically like, screw you if you don't know how to do it, you know?
That's real. Like, I mean...
Because, when you feel kind of fucked over, you know, and these kinds of lowlifes become your heroes. He's like the Tony Soprano of the 21st. He's like a realized Tony Soprano is now in the White House.
I guess this is just like our low trust society, is that everyone is paranoid and thinks that they're like going to get fucked over unless they, you know, kind of do the fucking first. But I mean,
either fuck or be fucked, Alana.
Yes. Well, you know, I don't love the show Mad Men, but I remember the character who was the founder of the firm. He was like, he has this whole spiel where he's like, eat or be eaten, you know, and that's what I learned when I was young. And so anyway, we're kind of wandering afield from the censorship topic. So I looked up like, okay, what's the current state of book bans in the US? And
tell me.
Yeah, it's interesting. So this is from PEN America, an organization I have a lot of esteem for. Since 2021, PEN America has documented nearly 23,000 book bans in public schools, a number never before seen in the life of any living American.
Since 2021, you said?
Since 2021. These book bans now affect nearly every state and disproportionately target books about race and racism, titles by or about people of color, and books featuring LGBTQ plus characters and themes, as well as works for older readers that include sexual references or discussions of sexual violence. So, you know, that sounds like right wing, coming from the right. Some of the most banned books include, actually the number one is A Clockwork Orange.
You're kidding.
No.
Still? Oh
I know,
gosh.
Isn't that weird? That's the most banned book of the 2024-2025 school year. Is A Clockwork Orange.
Do you know what's interesting? Have you read A Clockwork Orange?
Yeah.
You know what's interesting is the Kubrick movie is almost beat for beat the book.
Yeah.
But he just leaves out the final chapter where these guys are older and they're regretting their past, and they're like in a bar, and they're like, it's a very moral story because he's talking about I mean, what inspired Anthony Burgess to write that
Yeah.
was his wife got beaten up by a couple of punks in the street, and he was worried about rising sort of street crime from these like aimless young people.
Interesting.
And that was one of the things that inspired him to write it.
Yeah.
And it's actually like a moralistic message.
Right.
He's not like celebrating violence.
No.
The movie makes it seem like that. Like it's just like, haha, whatever, human beings are animals. But the book, when you get to the last chapter, you're like, oh wow, this inverts the entire book that you just read.
Yeah.
You know?
That's interesting. I hadn't really remembered that. But all these books that are okay, there's a number of books on this list that I don't recognize, but then there's a bunch that I do, and they're from like when I was a kid. And before. Forever by Judy Blume. I think that's from the 1975 it was written.
Oh my god.
It's been the target of censorship for 50 years because she wrote it because her daughter wanted to read something where kids could have sex without either of them having to die, right? And so there's like teenage sex in the book. Perks of Being a Wallflower. I mean, that I read when I was a kid. Still being banned. Jeez. So these are all coming from, the right, obviously. And then there's stuff like that's obviously more contemporary books that are about, issues with like sexuality and whatever.
Like is Bret Easton Ellis on there?
I don't know.
Is J.K. Rowling on there?
I seriously doubt that that's on the radar. Bret Easton Ellis is on too many contemporary high school kids' radar. It's not on the list.
Oh, sure. This is just in high schools. Oh, okay,
this is The Bluest Eye is on there. There is George. No, George R.R. Martin is on there.
Wow. Is Mark Twain on there? Huckleberry Finn?
No, like it's not. No. Yeah, no, Huck Finn's not on there. That's fine. Apparently, it used to get banned. Because of like all the N-bombs, I think. Yeah.
I had read years ago that it was banned every year since it was published in 1906. Every year somebody banned it.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm sure it still is. This is just a list of the top, like.
Oh yeah, I'm just curious
whatever. But so
the
it's
Bluest
definitely coming.
Eye, I mean,
the Bluest Eye. I mean, well, she, there's sexual abuse in that book. I mean, I guess that's why. I don't know. But so this is all clearly coming from the right, and I think a lot of it is a reaction to the right's perceptions of the forces of wokeism. Like particularly the stuff that's aimed at like books about gender and sexuality. It's like of a piece with like the panic over drag queen story time at the library, right? It's like stupid culture war bullshit. So I think that's where a lot of it's coming from. Yeah.
Man.
But I remember, my first sort of awareness of censorship when I was young was Tipper Gore and the Parents Music Resource Center, which I don't know if you remember, but they are most famous for putting the parental advisory explicit lyrics sticker on CDs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That had naughty words. And they went
and helped to sell probably 1 trillion records in its day.
Of course, which is like, do you know a thing about how young people work? Like, have you ever met a young person?
I'm sure that became part of their marketing scheme. Like, let's get that advisor notice on there. Oh, yeah. We'll go platinum.
That sticker just became like a then it was sort of adopted and it became this like kind of counterculture. Yeah. I remember kids wearing t-shirts that had that on the t-shirt, like as a sort of ironic, like, yeah, I'm explicit, fuck you, like whatever.
And also, by the way, I wanted to say, I'm sure Otessa Mushfi book sales have exploded.
Oh, of course.
All it does, these, I mean, the best thing you can do for book sales and to become rich and famous is to get censored and banned.
Yeah. Yes.
You will sell 1 trillion books or records.
What could be more titillating, right? Like now I have to see. I have to see what's so bad about this. What is so forbidden?
just like with this story, we read it and we're like, because you go to those books, especially when you're a kid, or you go to those records or movies, and you're like, oh, it's really not a big deal in the end. It's not like
No.
you're sitting there sort of tittering about it, like, oh my God, I can't believe I've seen that or read that. It's just like the whole thing is just such a foolish campaign to try to. You can just never ultimately, especially in the modern age when everything's online.
Yeah,
you can never ultimately censor really anything.
No, now
in fact, the best. I feel like the best way you can do it is with this pile-on social media shit, because a lot of that was dangerously effective. You start calling people's employers.
Yes.
Getting them fired. I just, there were people that I really disagreed with, and I was like, we really shouldn't be doing this to this person. It's just atrocious.
Right.
It's just like unethical. I don't care that I hate this guy. I hate what he said. Like, I would like him to still have a paycheck so he can feed his kids, even though I don't like him.
No kidding. To take away someone's livelihood as punishment for, especially when it's just something that they said, right? Not even a deed, just a word, like in word rather than deed, right? To me is so disproportionate and really so like violent in a way. And I think torturous. and I think has been more effective than anything Tipper Gore ever did, right? Like, she only made us want to experience it more. But when you take away somebody's job or you prevent their book from coming out, right? You are actually silencing the person, and it's not coming from the government in those cases. It's coming from cohorts of people who have decided that they are the arbiters of morality, right? And that they know what's best. They know what's best for the rest of us and what's appropriate for the rest of us, and they're going to take action, right? And I find it extremely insidious and troubling. And the people who continue to deny that, like, cancellation, whatever you want to call it, is a thing, I'm sort of disgusted by at this point.
Yeah, you and I talked about that. Ron, was his name Ron Swanson? Ron.
That's the guy from isn't he from like Parks and Recreation or something? Jon Ronson.
Jon Ronson. You know what's funny is that I never watched that show. I just know,
I haven't either, but I know he's a character on this show because people like quoting it, like he's very memed or whatever. Jon Ronson, who wrote So You've Been Publicly Shamed.
Yes, and that was like the first book that like embraced the idea that this was actually happening,
and that it was
I
like
never read it, but
a problem. Yeah. It's a great book. It's a great book, and it really came out before this even peaked. You know,
what year did it come out, or was it like early 2010s?
I'm looking it up right now. So You've Been Publicly Shamed. 2015.
I remember he did some.
2015.
Yeah, he did some kind of Yeah.
No, I feel like it really started taking off 2016 when Trump was elected, and then like the Harvey Weinstein shit went down. To me, that's when it really like it totally revved up and got nuts. And so this came out 2015, so it was already like happening. But one of the things he talks about in the book is that public shaming as a punishment was something that had been utilized in the past. People were put in the stockades or whatever, and eventually most like civilized societies banned it because it was considered such an incredibly destructive and devastating punishment that it was like too much, actually. And this is something that these like societies that we would consider fairly backwards compared to today, like they felt that. And
here we are. Savagely digitally stockading people and like getting them fired over basically nothing.
Right.
Oftentimes it was just a misinterpretation of something they said, because you're like, wait a minute, did he actually say that? And you're like, wait a minute, it's not what he said.
Right.
But I guess I think of it as 2014 because that's when Ryan Boudinot's piece came out. I think it was in The Stranger. It was one of those Canadian magazines. And his little piece was just like, I was an MFA teacher, and here's I don't remember the name of it, but it was just like 10 points.
Yeah.
And it was confrontational. And he was like, look, you either have it or you don't. Here's my experience of teaching people. Get real, read books. F you, basically.
Right.
Mic drop at the end.
Yeah.
And it just was like interesting to read because a lot of it was true. I remember reading it and just forgetting about it. And then I considered some of the points, and then I kind of moved on. I read it at work. And then like a week later, this guy was everywhere. There was a whole website devoted to destroying his life. They wanted to take down all of his projects, ruin his career, get him edged out of society. I mean, and who was this guy? Nobody had heard of this guy. You know?
He's not someone who had all this like cultural capital or something.
Yeah, right? just some MFA teacher.
Yeah.
And the reaction being so swift and so intense, I just was completely startled by it. I found it very alarming.
It is alarming.
And so in my head, it's like 2014 is when that really started, because that was it was so disproportionate.
Yeah.
You know, this guy was not Philip Roth or the president, you know what I mean? Or senator. He just was like some guy who was an MFA teacher. He'd written a couple of books, and the hammer just, and he wrote a nice, he's on Substack now. He wrote a nice piece about the impact of it on his life. And it's just, you know, when you think you're just kind of piling on, you're having fun on social media, whatever. I mean, the impacts on these people's lives, it's really devastating. It is
devastating.
Unfair. And even if somebody is really a crude schmuck and you hate them, you don't want to do this to those people.
Yeah.
It's very intense. It's very intense.
Because for you, whatever feelings it's arousing for you, whatever anger, that's going to burn off and you're going to forget about it. But for this person whose life you've participated in like dismantling, right? It is forever going to be the first thing that comes up when you look them up online. Yeah. So not only is it going to affect their current livelihood, it's going to be very difficult for them to get other kinds of work in the future. You know, do they have families to support? Do they have children to support? They're going to
start thinking about suicide.
They do. And they do. And they do. It's very common that people who have been shamed, canceled, whatever you want to call it, in this way, often do start thinking about taking their lives because they feel like their lives are over. There's this great phrase for it that I came across that I feel like is better than cancel culture. Because people now, when they hear cancel culture, they immediately react and they feel like the term is misused or they don't really buy it. So this anthropologist, Roger Lancaster, calls it poisoned solidarity. And I always thought that was really good. You know, it's that a poisoned solidarity when people come together to destroy, right?
Mob solidarity.
Yeah. Yeah. A feeling. So I came across, so this is like secondhand. Oh, this is a great book of essays as well, by the way. This writer, Joanne Vipieski, wrote this book called What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Me Too. And it's a series of essays that are pushing back on a lot of kind of received notions about different people who were subject to social discipline, right? In the wake of Me Too. So she talks about this phrase, poison solidarity. She defines it as communal feeling forged from the negative energies of fear, suspicion, vigilance, mutual identification against the demons. Poison solidarity is a staple of the right-wing diet, but it is a recent and unwelcome addition to the leftist menu. Beneath the veneer of liberation, she writes, an enthusiasm for punishment is palpable.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, so I think this is what a lot of censorship does look like now. Or has. Yep. Maybe it's, I don't know. Do you think it's getting better? Has it been subsiding a little bit?
It feels like the online version is subsiding a little bit, but unfortunately the echoes and implications of these things are going to last.
Yeah.
They eventually, you know, culturally they start to happen online or whatever in other forms. And then they reach the Supreme Court. You know, and then they have some justification for whatever, you know, some case where somebody can be legally censored, and then we're screwed.
Yeah.
And that was always my argument, was like, look, I know this person deserves to be criticized. I don't like him or her either, and what they said was bad.
Right.
But you're not thinking through the long-term consequences of trying to get somebody's job lost and trying to punish people just for speech.
Right.
Because it's going to come back and it's going to affect everybody who, and even especially those who are saying perfectly righteous and true things. You know? That's the only place for it to end. It doesn't end with you, haha, yes, we won. We got this reactionary, like, numbnut. We got him fired.
Yeah.
It doesn't end there. It just, it reverberates through society, and eventually it becomes, it takes on at some point, it takes on a legal standing. And that's what we're seeing in Florida.
Yeah.
And we may see a lot more of it. It's really shocking to hear that we've had the most book bans in the last 5 years. That's really disappointing. Not that we, just to be clear, this has always happened. There's always been counties and library systems.
Yes.
Some granny got upset about Nabokov or whatever, and they wanted to ban it. It's always been going on, but like, to hear that it's at its peak right now is disturbing, and it's a consequence of a lot of this. What did you call it? Poison solidarity online nonsense that we've all seen go on.
Which, of course, you see on the left and on the right.
Yeah. And you see the right doing it first. Like we were saying a second ago. Like, it was the right. They were doing it, and they were just these stinkers. Like, everybody hated them. It was like, shut up, like, you're just like these moralizing losers in positions of power.
Scolds.
And nobody liked them. They were totally moral scolds. And then it just popped off on the other side of the spectrum, and it just was very, very unfortunate, and very backwards.
Yeah. And now I think the left, I mean, people talk about how there's been this like political realignment, and now the left is seen as, the more sort of moralizing scold, whatever. The right is still doing it. They're just kind of like, they're, now positioning themselves as the defenders of free speech, but we know that's not true. It just kind of feels like no one's really defending free speech, except for maybe, certain organizations like PEN America, and then the other one is FIRE. Do you know FIRE?
I do.
Yeah, which I think they're great.
Yes.
So, but yeah.
Yeah. But, freedom of expression protects speech that you do not like.
Mm-hmm.
Does not protect speech that you do like. That's not what freedom of expression is for. It's for speech, and I hope that everyone can keep that in their brains.
That's right.
It's for the speech that you don't like. Any kind of speech you don't like, swearing, sex, political, whatever it is. That's what freedom of speech is for. It's not for anything else. The stuff that you like, of course, you're not going to censor that.
Right.
And it's a fundamental principle of people who like art, who like freedom, who like America. It's a very basic American liberal privilege we've given ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a fundamental, basic thing that does have to be protected. But I want to ask one question.
Yes.
If you could censor an artist, who would it be?
Wow. Thank you for asking. There is someone that I wish.
We all have some people we just hate, and we're like, we just want to get rid of them. Just shut them up.
Yep.
Bundle them up and throw them in the ocean.
I'm going to say it. Clarice Lispector. Let's shut that lady up. Well, I mean, she's no longer with us, so she's not talking anymore, but she has been enjoying this canonization from a lot of serious readers and writers these days. And I am baffled. I am baffled by it. So I read one of her books years ago because just there were so many people, and like people I respect, who were just praising her as this like innovative prose stylist, and of course, like, I want to read more brilliant women writers. So I read this book of hers called The Hour of the Star, and I just felt like I was having a stroke. Like, I felt like I was having a stroke while I was reading this book. I was like, this lady can't write. You know, I mean, that was my initial reaction, but then I kind of like, I want to be humble, and I was thinking like, okay, maybe the problem is me, because so many people adore her. I must not be like understanding what she's doing. I must be missing, you know, the like linguistic wizardry or something. I just was like, the problem must lie with me. But so I put, you know, I finished the book. I don't remember a single thing about it other than that reaction I had to it, and I've never read her again. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't know. I guess, a dum-dum. I don't get Clarice Lispector. So, but thank God you started checking out her work recently, and you have confirmed for me that I am not, in fact, insane. Right? What was your reaction to Clarice Lispector?
The same thing, man. I was underwhelmed, bored. A lot of cliches happening here. My one sort of caveat or hesitation about that judgment was that it is in translation. She writes in Portuguese, so I thought maybe we're getting a bad translation. But I read some of these stories. I got a big book of stories I'm showing off to you right now. It's like her full. I haven't read the whole thing, and I'm not going to. But I just, you know, here's a little sample for our listeners who haven't read Clarice Lispector. A little tired, the groceries stretching out her new knit sack, Anna boarded the tram. She placed the bundle in her lap, and the tram began to move. She then settled in her seat, trying to get comfortable, with a half-contented sigh. Anna's children were good, something true and succulent. They were growing up, taking their baths, demanding for themselves misbehaved, past tense for some reason, ever more complete moments. All that is one sentence. They were growing up, taking their baths, demanding for themselves misbehaved, ever more complete moments. I don't know. The kitchen was, after all, spacious. The faulty stove gave off small explosions. Ooh, that sounds weirdly dangerous and casually said. The heat was stifling in the apartment they were paying off bit by bit. But the wind whipping the curtains she herself had cut to measure reminded her that if she wanted, she could stop and wipe her brow, gazing at the calm horizon like a farmhand. I don't know. I just read this and I'm like,
this is what I felt. I felt like when I was reading it, like
feels like AI.
Like the grammar was all jumbled in a way that, like, I just found it really difficult to follow, and like, I don't know. I just could. Yeah, and so maybe it's. I don't think it's the translation though, because I've now read a little bit from her, you know, various places, and so I think this was just her style. And so, like, I don't. What do you think it is about her that's speaking to people? Because there are people who love her.
Yes, and we have to sort of accept here that she was 23. She wrote her first book. Her first book, which was called Near to the Wild Heart. She was 23. It was 1943. She's Ukrainian Jewish. She was actually born in a shtetl in Ukraine. Her father comes to Brazil and is just, they're completely broke. Apparently he was a brilliant guy and he was trying to struggle to get his daughters a good education. And she has an interesting backstory.
Yeah.
She gets into Kabbalah, mysticism, you know, philosophy. She's very well educated. She marries a diplomat and then actually is in exile from Brazil. And she lives in Europe for a long time. But this book just blew up her reputation. She was also, weirdly, they just kind of throw in there, a fashion writer. I don't know when this happened. So apparently she's some literary superstar, but she's also writing about fashion. So there are these ideas of like, she deliberately messes with grammar, and she's always been kind of talking about women's experiences and issues. She's very much a feminist, I guess, when she was very young. And during the junta in Brazil, they would like pat her down and like question her, and like, you know, she's this crazy radical artist. And so she may have gained kind of global purchase because of this reputation.
Right. Right.
And just like you, I had heard about her for years, and I was always like, I should read this Clarice Lispector. I keep hearing about her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did, and I was like, I couldn't believe how kind of bungly and kind of uninteresting her writing was. Because, you know, and I'm going to sound like a real insufferable bastard here, but I'm an aesthete. I don't care what the story is telling me. I just don't care. I don't care if it's about something bad or good, or if I like the main character narrator or not. I am ensorcelled by the language. I remember, you know how I discovered John Cheever?
Yeah.
I must have been 22 or something, and I was reading an article in the Harper's Magazine about John Cheever, who I'd never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And they quoted just one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I read the sentence and I was like, who wrote this sentence?
Right.
You know, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, they quoted a bit more, and I thought, I have to read this guy.
Right.
It just was his language was just incredible, and that's what led me to John Cheever. It wasn't a recommendation; it just was reading one single sentence in a magazine article.
That makes sense.
That's really all I. That's really all I care about. That's why I love Nabokov. That's why I love Amos. That's why I love all these, you know, great writers.
Yeah.
And to me, that's how you get people, and then you can do what you want. That's how you get them. So if you start with a little tired, you know, she boarded the tram. It's just like I'm already like snoozing away.
Yeah.
And these, you know, these constructions are just very like, they're not compelling. They're not even really very creative or interesting. I don't know what to say. They're just maybe at the time in Brazil it was like they were getting some kind of high voiced literature that was just kind of driving people nuts, and so she was kind of relief from that, you know. It could be something like that, just a cultural thing that made her popular. So there's all kinds of cultural historical stuff that maybe we don't know. But I completely agree with you. I read it and I was like, let's ban this one. Let's get rid of it. Let's just take her in a helicopter out to sea and just dump it.
Throw it on the bonfire. Burn that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read maybe 5 stories from this gigantic tome of her short stories, and I'm just I can't go on. I'm just like, they're all kind of the same. They're just like not. They want to be something that it doesn't feel like they're attaining.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's just one of those. It's one of those writers where I'm like, am I taking crazy pills? You know, like where I've just seen a lot of hype. I'm like, let me experience this, and it's like, am I taking crazy? You know? Yeah. I
don't know. I don't really know what fully explains it, but also another thing I learned in reading up on her a little bit was that the sort of literary writers of Brazil of the 20s and 30s were also like, why is anybody reading this woman? They were
That's
just like,
hilarious.
They were critical of her, and they were like, she's not good. She's not interesting.
Yeah.
And it was the people we have to accept. It was the people who were like, she is our mistress of, you know, she has this very witchy reputation.
Yeah.
You know, they're always like, she's going to be careful. Even somebody says in here, be careful reading Lispector. She's dangerous.
Oh,
I'm serious.
Brother.
And then you read it and you're like, and I got on the tram. She was tired.
Yeah.
Like,
no, my preferred witchy writer with an adopted Latin American homeland is Leonora Carrington, who's great. Who wrote the one that I've read by her is The Hearing Trumpet. And I also just went to a show of her sculptures at a gallery that is in
very
I think
cool.
It's still on in Chelsea right now. So she was a surrealist artist and writer, and The Hearing Trumpet is a delightful romp, and she's my preference. If I'm going to read a mystical woman writer who lived in a Latin American country, it's going to be Leonora Carrington. So if you haven't read The Hearing Trumpet, you should check it out. It's really fun. Really fun.
Very cool.
Oh, and so I just also wanted to mention, and so pivoting to writers whose work we do love very much. Shortly before we started recording, I learned that the writer John Crowley has died, and this is just a writer that I adore, and is, I think, probably a bit underrated. He's often associated with like fantasy and sci-fi, but I think like many great writers whose work kind of dips into genre, those terms don't really do him justice.
Okay.
Interestingly, Harold Bloom was a huge fan of John Crowley. And
Wow.
John Crowley's most famous work is called Little Big, and Bloom called it a neglected masterpiece and said it was one of the
Oh, I
finest
remember him saying
novels
that.
of
Yeah.
the modern
Yeah.
era. So anyway,
Wow.
I've read Little Big. I've read a couple others by John Crowley, and I found them
Do you agree about
all.
that?
Yeah, I do agree. I have to say, Little Big is after I read it, it quickly just became one of my favorite novels, like period.
Wow. Okay.
And I've read a couple other of his books, and I need to read more. But all three of the books of his that I read were wonderful and like absorbing in that way that you feel like when you're a child reading, but they're not childish books at all. But I experienced that level of absorption. So I just saw this guy. I felt like this
So
was
rare these days.
so rare. Yeah, so I came across this guy. I don't know him. You follow him on Twitter. His name is at Franz Herbert or Franz S. Herbert or Franz Sherbert. I'm not sure how it's to be read.
I don't know.
He's on Twitter, but he just said, about Crowley, R.I.P. to the greatest living author. He's known for his magisterial and intensely moving Little Big. He was unequaled at combining the fantastical. No one ever made it seem more truly strange, more incommensurable with regular experience, and the human. It's the greatest fantasy novel of the 20th century and probably the best work of art I know of about marriage. So I thought that was a nice tribute. I feel genuinely sad that he is no longer with us. So I just wanted to mention that. But so how about you? Have you been jotting anything in your commonplace book these days?
Yeah, not really in my current commonplace book. I'm going to read Little Big. I remember Harold Bloom saying that and being like, "Who the heck? What is this book?" Because he was an interesting critic in that way. He would like throw out some poet or writer, and you'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
And I remember him mentioning that book, and I was like, I didn't have time to sort of make note.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm going to read it because that's
great.
That's very interesting.
I am so curious what you'll make of it. Yeah.
Very cool. But yeah, I was thinking anyway, because I memorized this particular poem by Dylan Thomas, which is actually the Welsh way of how you pronounce his name.
Wait, say it again.
Dylan Thomas.
Like not Dylan.
He's Welsh.
Dylan. Yeah.
Not Dylan. Mm-hmm. Dylan. He preferred Dylan.
Okay.
Dylan was actually taken from like a Welsh folk tales. That's where the name sort of originated. And talk about censorship. Like there are some of these artists out there that it's just hard to really take their measure and understand what happened. Like this guy published some of his most famous poems when he was 19 years old.
It's wild.
He came out of nowhere. I mean, Wales. I don't know if my wife like loves Wales, so I know a bit more about it.
Okay.
It has the longest place name, like a town that has the longest name in the world.
The Welsh language is very interesting. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Celtic language, very interesting culture, beautiful landscape. A lot of really famous writers and poets are actually from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think even the Amoses were Welsh.
Oh, okay.
Originally, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just comes out of nowhere. Like it's like, who was it who said that? Oh, it was Amos. He said like, he was trying to explain to an American about Wales, and he was like, he's like, it's our Puerto Rico.
Okay.
That's how he described Wales.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like a distant, nearby, but yet distant and weirdly magical, and like kind of like lower class society, kind of, you know what I mean? Like a put upon, judged, overly,
yes,
I don't know, marginalized society, basically.
Yeah.
And but yet beautiful, just in the way
Yeah.
Puerto Rico is, and very interesting and culturally different. And so he just starts pumping out these very mature, amazing poems, including his most famous ones like "Do not go gentle into that good night," and death shall have no dominion. 19 years old.
Amazing.
If you can even imagine.
I can't.
If you can even imagine having. So his language was so rich. He was all about the sounds, the sounds of the language. He had this very, like, the way he would recite his poems was very much a part of his poetry. He had this deep voice, and it was mesmerizing. And obviously you can go and listen to these online. And people were offended, of course.
Yeah.
He was also a speaker for the BBC, so he's on the BBC radio. And people would write in, they would complain, his poems are offensive, they're too, I don't know, whatever they said, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But in the contemporary context, it would have been like a online pylon for poor Dylan Thomas, and his like powerful poetry would have been censored, at least in that way.
Yeah.
But he dies when he's 39 in New York. His big way of making money, because poetry never made anybody any money.
Doesn't pay the bills. Yeah.
He was just doing the Dickens thing. He came to New York and he would do tours and he would speak. And the fun thing about it, the reason why it was so popular, is that he would show up drunk. He would show up with his clothes half hanging off.
Yeah.
He would just get offensive, and he would be a complete, just like total wild card.
Yeah.
And people love that.
Yeah, for sure.
And he just was, but his problem was he was just an amazing alcoholic.
Yeah.
And the myth is that he went to the White Horse Tavern in New York and had 18 whiskeys, and then and that killed him. But he didn't have that. They interviewed the bartender, and he was like, it wasn't 18. He was bragging. It was like half that.
Yeah. Still like a lot. It's still,
But that's quite a lot. If you've had a shot or two of whiskey, you feel it. So to have 8 or 9, that's quite a lot.
I would be in the hospital. Yes.
But he had been ill for a long time. He had chest pains. He had physical issues. It was the 50s, he was a very major, serious, depressive alcoholic. And he just, he passed away from us. He just sort of, So 19 to 39, he had 20 years of just, 200 poems, a couple of books. And to me, he's just one of the absolute greats.
Yeah.
And I love his most famous poems, but my most favorite poem of his, which I had written down once in an old commonplace book, was "The force that through the green fuse drives the flower," and that is the one I will recite for you tonight.
Great. And then one last thing I want to mention is that supposedly his spirit does haunt the White Horse Tavern. So if you are in New York, pay a visit. It's in the West Village. Maybe you will get some poetic vibes. So
opened in 1880 and still going.
Still going strong. Yep. So we would like to thank our listeners and our team, TNA Productions and the Literary Media, Arthur Duffy and Kurt Kilpatrick, and our producer, Eric Janikis. And now, a reading of The Force That Through the Green Fuse Drives the Flower by Dylan Thomas.
The force that through the green fuse drives the flower drives my green age, that blasts the roots of trees is my destroyer, and I am dumb to tell the crooked rose my youth is bent by the same wintry fever. The force that drives the water through the rocks drives my red blood, that dries the mouthing streams turns mine to wax, and I am dumb to mouth unto my veins how at the mountain spring the same mouth sucks. The hand that swirls the water in the pool stirs the quicksand that ropes the blowing wind, hauls my shroud sail, and I am dumb to tell the hanging man how of my clay is made the hangman's lime. The lips of time leach to the fountainhead, love drips and gathers, but the fallen blood shall calm her sores, and I am dumb to tell a weather's wind how time has ticked a heaven round the stars. And I am dumb to tell the lover's tomb how at my sheet goes the same crooked worm.